Welcome back, everybody, to Banking Bytes. This is episode 3, Innovative Technologies. We have an incredible guest with us today, Steve Mallet. He's got an incredible background. I will not do the disservice of trying to elaborate or explain that background. And of course, I'm here with my partner in crime. I keep trying to come up with a moniker for you, Matt. What do you have an idea on that?
Legend generally goes pretty well.
Okay. We'll continue talking about
that. We'll work that out, shall we? In a few goes, yeah.
That's right. Well, as always, Matt, it's great to be back here with you. I love working with you. I mentioned we're going to talk about innovative technologies, and we have Steve Mallet here. Steve, thanks for joining.
How are you? Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. I hope I can live up to it.
I'm good with the superlatives, but I think if you don't mind taking a moment to sort of share your background and let everybody know where you come from and your experience, so that they get the idea of some of the context.
Of course, Fred. Thank you very much. So, born and raised in the industrial northeast of England. I sort of fell into technology as a child. I grew up a working class family with heavy engineering was the background from my father, and I was into sport when I was a youngster, and that was the be all and end all of my life, I have to say. But then went to college, got my A levels, didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I thought, okay, well, I'll probably be a maths teacher. So off I went to university, did a maths degree, started a maths degree, should I say? Fell out with it after about 3 months when there was no numbers involved anymore. So I sort of had a good time in Sheffield for the rest of my year, and did all sorts of bar work and door work and all sorts of good stuff in it, and just had a good time. And then realised it was time I got a job. So I ended up in the civil service in the UK, and I was once in an interview, and they said to me, Mr. Mallet, are you interested in EDP? So I said, well, what's in it for me? And they said, well, an extra £2,000 a year. So I said, yes, I've always been interested in it. So that was my journey into technology, into computing, EDP, electronic data processing. And I ended up in a place called Southend-on-Sea for Customs and Excise, where they taught me how to be a COBOL programmer. I then saw an advert in the Computer Weekly, as we all used to check every week, for better things, and saw an advert for Midland Bank up in Sheffield. So I thought to myself, well, that's halfway back up to Newcastle. So took the job, Midland Bank, 1988, and 31 years later, I ended up as the CIO of payments for globally for HSBC. So over those 31 years at Midland and then HSBC, worked across all of the various sectors, retail banking, corporate, commercial, private, supporting operations, supporting finance, supporting payments. As I say, I ended up being the CIO for payments technology. I, in quotes, retired in 2019 and took some time off, and then I was quite lucky because the phone kept ringing. So a lot of vendors who were software suppliers and services providers who I had been a customer of at HSBC realized the value of bringing me in as a consultant to help them win deals, refine and define go-to-market propositions, sort of taking that bank view and being able to help either dig them out of holes or prevent them getting in the holes in the first place. So, so I've been consulting and advising for the last sort of 4 or 5 years, a different pace of life without the stress and strains of going to bed every night wondering when the call's going to ring, when the phone's going to ring, for a crisis call. But yeah, all good. So yeah, I've been part of Endava's TAC now for the last 2+ years. And that's me.
So, sounds like you did okay for yourself. CIO of payments at HSBC. You could do a little bit worse, right?
But we do need to call out, though, Fred, that Steve is also a Newcastle supporter. I just think it's important.
Well, oh no! Did we just alienate a bunch of people? Like, what just happened? I'm going to study up.
There's a possibility you can either have brought a lot of people on board or alienate them. It's literally a bit of a coin toss. So we'll put it out there.
Okay, we'll figure out how to do damage control afterwards. Maybe we'll edit that out in post. Steve, it's great to have you, and I appreciate the background. One of the things that we were talking about internally is Matt and I haven't done an episode where we really kind of dive into our backgrounds and who we are. We talked about it a little bit, but right, it's all those nuances and the little cracks and crevices that actually have a tremendous impact on shaping who we are and how we think about things. And I had a bit of a rambling kind of route, meandering, whatever you want to call it, to get here. But I think it's a lot of who I am and how I operate and how I think. And I wouldn't change any of those things for the world. So, well, we're going to jump in here then. So we're here to talk today about innovative technologies. And it's always poor form to do the definition, what is innovative technologies, but I do think it's important that we just level set quickly on when I say innovative technology. Steve, what comes to mind for you? What's your intuitive response to that?
My intuitive response is really about innovation in technology, and you know, I think it's all about the simple things. It's not about necessarily fancy tools and complexities. It's just being able to change the way we work, to do things better, smarter, to create that value. And value can be additional revenue, it can be reduced costs, it could just be better ways of doing things and you know, having people happier in their work. But it's very rarely the complex stuff. It is more the simple stuff. And that's why I think often the people who are best to identify innovations are those who are working with it, working in the business every day, day in, day out. And you have to be brave, I think. You have to challenge what you see. You have to be, and you have to, as a leader, I think you have to engender within your teams the confidence to be able to challenge and to be brave enough to say, well, why don't we do things differently? And I think that's where the organizations who do this best thrive. You know, having a workforce who are actually doing the job, who are empowered to challenge the status quo.
And Matt, I have a great example of exactly what you've just said, Steve, and I'll probably share it a little bit later. Matt, how does that align for you?
So what I've tended to find in my career, I've got quite an eclectic one, and as you said, in due course, we'll get into that more. But what I've tended to find is innovation, whether it's in tech or anything else, is often simplicity. You know, we all too often get caught up, and especially in the social banking, payment, technology, etc. Everyone's trying to make things more complex. Often you find something that works really, really well. You go back to foundational basics, and then you start from there. And it's actually a cultural mindset, which I think is still, we're finding more and more in today's world. There is more of an equitable relationship between what we classify as banking and fintech, but generally they're coming at it from two different angles, is the reality. You know, in some cases, if you're on the fintech side, it's, I've got this idea. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I'm going to spend time, effort, and energy to see if it does. On the bank side, or in the FI or insurance or whatever, there has to be an ROI up front. You know, what's the business case? What problem are we solve? What's the exact problem we're solving? How is it exactly going to solve it? So you're coming at it from two different ways, and you can, especially if you've got capital or you're self-funding, you can burn through time, energy, and money, and actually junk it at the end and say, do you know what? I figured out how not to do it. Awesome. On to the next thing. That doesn't exist in the corporate world. You can't present back to your board, hey, I found a way of spending $100 million and not achieving anything, right? It just doesn't work that way. So there has to be this nuance and relationship in between. But, I talk a lot, and I have done over the years, about Apple. Most things that Apple have, they didn't invent themselves in truth. They just perfected it. I think that sometimes you can have the best idea, but is it the right time for that to come to fruition? Is that innovation ready? Is the infrastructure in place to support that? We use Netflix a lot of the time. Their view was streaming services day one, but the world wasn't ready for it. You weren't going to get that on dial-up. So it was actually, let's deliver you entertainment, movies on DVD and mail subscription services. I mean, that's gone, right? That doesn't exist anymore. And now they're building their own studios and running their own productions and developments. So it's about, you can have the innovation and the vision and the foresight, but how are you going to get there and how are you going to scale it and industrialize it? So that was a very long answer to what was supposed to be a clipped question.
I think, Matt, just adding to that, as technologists, what we traditionally haven't necessarily done so well is actually get ourselves into the business to actually see the business running that we are supporting and building systems for. And early in my career, I was encouraged to do that. And I've subsequently done that, and I've encouraged my teams to do that, because you get some real nuggets and of opportunity. And as I say, as technologists, we can watch the business and see what they're doing, and we know what we can make the systems do to help them in their daily work to introduce operational efficiencies. I've got a great story, and it's a true story. I was in Guangzhou in China with my head of payments in Asia, and we were visiting the payments operations floors in Guangzhou. And we had the introduction, and we're walking around all the different teams, and everybody's banging away, repairing payments and doing investigations and all sorts of good stuff. And we got to one of the teams, and there must have been about 10 people, and they're all sat there with their heads at 90 degrees looking at the screens. And at first I took a step back and I thought, well, first of all, health and safety. I'm sure we can't really be allowing this. And we asked the payments lead. We said, why are they all sat like that and with their heads to one side? And they said, well, Steve, payments processing in China requires so many documents. It's really document heavy to validate and check payments, and these are scanned documents that appear on the screen. And certain documents come up landscape instead of portrait. And, so they have to tilt their heads at 90 degrees to read them. And I just put my hand on my head and went, oh, we can fix this so quickly. So a very simple technology change. Is it innovation? Is it common sense? I'm not quite sure. But through a simple change within 2 or 3 weeks, we changed these people's lives and made them more efficient, more effective. And that for me is just a classic example of a true story of how, as technologists, if we get into the business, we can make a real difference.
It's that real aha moment of, why didn't I think of that earlier? Yeah. And I think I'd add to your point as well, and this is something I've had to learn as a technologist when I was in the bank, is, and I'll be truthful about it, I carried a certain level of arrogance with myself. I'm the head of X, Y, and Z, and I know what's what. I know a part of it. I don't know all of it. Have more humility about it, and then bring in collaboration, and that's where real innovation and intuitive thinking comes in. But if you've got, and I say I've done it, you're going to business saying, I'm going to fix everything for you. You're also backward in your way of doing things. Watch me, reduce friction points, etc. But what if they weren't the friction points that actually really needed addressing? You're just patting yourself on the back for being a technologist, right? Not end-to-end thinking and bringing that innovation and intuition into a material impact.
Well, I can give a great example of innovation that is not technological, but you travel a lot, Matt. I travel a lot, Steve. I'm sure you do or have through the course of your career. And so the card at the hotel, it goes into the jacket, and you fiddle faddle with that jacket, and you do it for the full week of travel, whatever, right? Or at least I do. I was in Australia. I check into the hotel. I get the key card. It's in a jacket. And what they've done is they've cut a hole on one side of it. And at first I looked at it and I thought, well, this is wonderful. It's another place for them to put a logo or something. And then I got on the elevator and I had to tap the card to go. And I realized I don't ever have to take this thing out of the jacket because they've cut a hole in it. And it as simple as it was, the amount of convenience that it brought to my experience was unbelievable. And so nothing magic there, right? It just somebody thought about the customer's experience, which I think as we talk about technical innovation, if we're doing it for the right reasons and based on that customer experience, then you're aligned, right? Then the organization can get behind it. Typically, it's some of the things there. I love what you said a moment ago, Steve, and I kind of this is off script, so you get ready for it. You mentioned earlier in your career, and when I think about how you came into banking and the levels that you achieved, did you have a mentor along the way? Did you have somebody that kind of pulled you aside and said, I can help you, like, let me help you navigate through this moment or this conversation? I'm not looking for a name, but just did you have somebody along the way that
I probably had two or three along the way who helped me at different times in my career, and sometimes from a technology point of view, but generally from a leadership point of view. I think, and obviously, as we know, leadership and management are two very, very different things. I think within teams, everybody can be a leader. You don't have to have the badge. You don't have to have the stripes. Everybody can be a leader, and it sort of takes me back to my sporting to my sporting thing, where one of the things I'm most proud of throughout my entire life. So I played soccer football, from when I was sort of 5 or 6 in teams and until I retired when I was nearly 40. And one of the things I'm most proud of, that every team I played for, I captained. And I was never the best player on the team. In some teams, I was probably the worst player on the team. But having that natural leadership and to be able to bring the team along and for the team to achieve as a team more than their individual parts, if you like, is one of the most fulfilling things. And I had a manager who recognized that and was able to help me adapt and adopt those in a working environment where you actually look at people as individuals and how everybody responds to different things. Some people need a kick on the backside. Some need an arm around the shoulder. That's more in a football team environment. I wouldn't propose doing that in the office. That in HR will be after me straight away if I'm kicking people up the backside or hugging them. But metaphorically, shall we say? I thought that was really, that really helped me and build and run global teams. Because as you said, I had teams. I had teams in every continent, 600 across all the globe, and again, to be able to lead different teams in different cultures in different environments is really, really important in any world, but certainly in a global banking technology. So I had a manager who showed me the way to get people to respond better and to feel that teaminess, Fred, and to also, I said before, have the bravery and the courage to challenge things and not just go with the flow and go, oh well, I know this is wrong, but that's what I've been told to do, and I think that's as important in payments technology as any industry. But yeah, that's the sort of mentoring I've seen, Fred.
Yeah. Thank you for that. It's not a part of our sort of the conversation that we have here, but I think I'm going to add that because it's really important, right? We're talking to a lot of very accomplished people that have led massive teams, and I think as a corporate culture, I don't believe we put enough emphasis on that, right? I think you can always do more and do better. But let's get back to the technology. So I appreciate you sharing. Innovative technology. What do you think is the most innovative technology that's emerging in the market, or what is the thing that sort of has you most excited or has captivated your attention? Say, here in the last 6 months, 12 months.
I think there's a few, but I would almost like to go back a little bit further to think about how technology has evolved in banking and payments over the years, Fred, and just to sort of think about the scale of the change that we've all seen. So if you think back to the 80s, and everything was done in branch, and we had checks, and Matt will remember this from the UK. If you used to go down to London, you used to see all these like things that looked like milk floats, electric carts flying between the banks, which were all full of checks, and the checks were passing between the banks and the clearing houses, and everything had to be ticked off, and for payments to be made. And we've come from there. We've come through that through ATMs, and obviously cards and contactless and wallets, and everything's changed, and everything's changing around to what's changing in society. Again, I always laugh when I think about ATMs, and when ATMs were first introduced. And my wife tells a brilliant story about her grandma, who was terrified to use ATMs first of all, and then eventually she did, and she became comfortable with it. And she said to Cheryl when she was younger, she said, she was from Wales, so apologies for the accent for the Welsh, but I'll try it. She said, Cheryl, she says, there's a boring job. And she says, well, sorry, Gran, what do you mean? She said, well, the person that puts the money through the hole in the wall to us, without the concept that this was all, this was a manual thing. So if you think of where we've come from to where we are now, we've seen an astronomical amount of innovation and change, and I think going forward, I think that the certain things have been introduced that have brought more transparency and straight through processing, especially in the payments world. With the introduction of faster payments, I think what we've seen is a blurring of the traditional high value Swift chaps type, high value, high care, but slower processing, and then at the other end of it, the mass pay, ACH, millions of payments, small values. With the introduction of immediate payments across the globe, domestically, the expectation now from everyone is everything happens like that in an instant. And I think technology going forward, and AI must have a place in here somewhere. I think because of the expectations now, I think this is where technology and innovation really needs to embrace, because that whole, as I say, the blurring of the lines between the traditional payment types has meant that the expectation is everything is in an instant. Matt, I'm sure you've seen that with all your dealings in Endava as well.
Absolutely, and I think just while we were talking, then I was thinking about this, and I'm kicking myself for not thinking about it before. So when we talk about disruption and innovation, a lens we often forget to think of is innovation for whom, right? Who's benefiting from that innovation? Because someone has to in order to fund it or do it. So let's use back office banking, for example. An innovation in the back office that creates efficiencies and therefore reduces operational costs, etc. The customer of the bank, that's irrelevant to them, right? But it's hugely innovative and it's game changing, of course. But an innovation that impacts the customer positively. So we referenced online banking, which took a while and to gain traction again around the discipline that we talked about, the infrastructure being in place. But it's ubiquitous. My kids don't understand what cash point's for. We've had to show them how to use a cash point because they so rarely need it. And I've lived on and off in the same place for a long time. And if I go past the banking, where I live is a cathedral square. There were lots of banks dotted around the edges of it. let's be honest, we all know one's a Starbucks, right? It doesn't matter what the brand was, but it's not a bank anymore. It's a Starbucks in this case. But the other one that I can remember at Christmas time queuing for hours at the ATM to get cash out that had like 3, 4, 5 ATMs across the wall. There are none. There's one inside because it's not needed now. We've transitioned to our phones. So I think the most disruptive thing in technology, if we look at that question almost philosophically, is people and society and where it is today. And back to your point, Steve, it's expectations. I reference my kids a lot. I say they're clueless, but actually, in retrospect, am I the one that's clueless? Because they're living in it, right? So there's no need to question what went before because it has no detrimental impact to them. It's just we're the ones who are this weird unit of having, the before, the middle, and the after. And the kids' expectation is it just works. They ask a device, it does something. And I think more and more we're going to see the innovation piece is going to be one or two big players who tie up all the dots in the background. You used your wife's grandmother as the example. I'm thinking there's someone feeding the machine in the ATM, right? It doesn't matter to her whether there is someone there doing it or not, or if it's automated. It just happens. I think so. To my point of the people in the background that can pull all this together, it doesn't matter if it's monkeys on machines, spit and wad, a hamster in the wheel. As long as the execution occurs as and when the person expects it, they're not bothered.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that about automation. I think that's a really, if you think about if you think about how software development was done and how operations were run 20 years ago, so there was lots of people doing lots of manual actions in high cost in high cost places. So and then an innovation at the time was, okay, I'll tell you what, let's offshore them. Let's offshore these operations, be they banking technology, whatever. So it's going to cost less. Okay, great. And then, what's going to happen next? Okay, we're going to automate the processes that those people do offshore by using bots and whatever. Again, innovation. The huge thing I think that wasn't necessarily done is the elimination, is to change the business process. So rather than just have these processes, which when we started doing automation, were still largely as they were 20 years before, they were just done by someone in a cheaper place, or they were then done by a bot. Actually, this is where, the bravery to change things, to actually look at what we're doing now and is it relevant in 2025? Just because it was relevant in 1985 doesn't mean it still is, And I think whenever we're looking at transformations, we have to look at, as well as the efficiency, we have to look at elimination because that's the most effective piece of automation is elimination, and just expanding that and extending that to where the industry is going in the future. Especially a lot of the large banks are still running a lot of big monolithic legacy platforms that have got functionality been built in there that was built 15, 20 years ago. And it was built when banks didn't necessarily consider what they should be building, but because they could, and it was somebody's little pet platform, if you like, they used to build it. They would build in functionality for specific clients and all that sort of what's really nonsense. But that was all built into the monolithic platform. At some point, we've got to get away from that. They've got to get out of that and migrate. And if we look at the more modern platforms, which, the smaller, more agile, leaner organizations and fintechs are using, they're much more modular and specific, leaving the core payments processing within the core. The bells and whistles are around the periphery, as where they should be. So when we think about modernization from especially for some of the, as I say, large global banks, and we all know who they are, that they're running platforms that have got so much redundant functionality in there that needs to be eliminated. But nobody's grasping the nettle that says we've got to migrate this, or we've got to convert it, we've got to change to a new platform at some point. And bringing that round to technology and innovation, there's got to be a place for AI in there. There's got to be a place where we analyze what's done today, not the functionality that's been built, but the functionality that's been used. And we use that to build the platforms of the future and build them in a more modular way. So the core is in the core and the other stuff is around the periphery. And if I can use just one example, one quick example of that, there's a lot of payments processing platforms have the validation built into the core. So we have armies of operators who they fail validation, it goes to a repair queue, and operators have to fix it. Because that's how it's been built. It's been built into the core. If we strip out that validation out of the core, where it shouldn't be, this is just about throughput and payments processing, stick that in the channel or the channels at the front. The people who are generating and initiating the payments, who've not known that they're doing something wrong for 15 years, and because some little army of operators have been fixing it offshore, if we get them to realize actually what you're inputting is not correct, tell them, make them fix it, bang, straight through processing, army of operations becomes a small cohort of operations, and we become more efficient. So sort of the things we can do in terms of innovation going forward to just make the whole thing better is just needs some discipline around it. And that's
It's interesting you say the discipline piece. I'm sure everyone's seen that the Fed announced the pushback in the US on ISO 222 from March, drop dead date, to July, which is exactly along those lines, right? You just need to do it. We're not ready yet. There are lots of different reasons why. But I've been thinking again, I don't know what I've been doing recently, maybe philosophical, long term. Once it's in, it doesn't matter if it's a year late, 18 months, 24 months late. It obviously does when I'm saying that, I'm being glib. But once it's in, and it's being leveraged. And then all the histrionics around it should have happened earlier, sooner. Yeah, all very true. There are some compelling reasons as to why there were delays. There are less, some that are less so. But actually, once it's in, you can start utilizing it. And I think sometimes that's a big part of these things as well, is a fear of what it means. The next big drop date we've got is November, where MT messaging is no longer allowed to operate on the Swift network, which is going to be huge. I think we'll see. I suspect that date will still stay. I mean, I could be proven wrong, but again, a lot of the time, and this is where banks are very good at, and I have to give them their credit, is they're thinking in the long term. And long term isn't 12, 18, 24 months. They're thinking 5, 10, 15, even 20 years, and they have to make decisions based on that, which is a whole different ballpark to your fintech that's in the cool space, getting lots and lots of funding, doesn't have to be profitable or any of those things, doesn't even have to be fully regulated yet. Let's also be frank in some cases. So it comes back to that innovation for who, and who's going to benefit or lose out.
Steve, I think we're touching on something that's interesting, and we haven't really kind of jumped into it yet, which is we can talk about technical innovation until the cows come home, and we can go out and buy or create the most innovative technologies on the planet. There is an organizational adoption, right? There is an organizational construct, framework, psychology, mindset that has to make that transition as well. And when you talk about AI, we have AI solutions, right? This is a podcast. I don't want people to tune into a commercial, so I'm not going to go into what they are. But we have AI solutions, and they are focused on core mod. But getting that transition mentally around what are you really going to do to take AI and plug it into a banking landscape to help accelerate or automate some portion of a process. That's logically, yes, where you start thinking towards these things. Where is it? And it's funny because when we talk about a COBOL mainframe and we got to move the monolith, where is it that we maybe potentially just change the way we do it altogether?
Yeah, there's got to be a. That's a really good question, because the as we said before, just migrating, converting from something old and inefficient, maybe that is the time to absolutely change how we do things, and it comes down to that foresight and bravery. And it's funny, when you guys were talking before, I was thinking, yeah, this is all great innovation in the future and this, but actually, what's really important and sits underneath all of this good stuff is you must, especially in the payments world, more than anywhere else, you must maintain the resilience, reliability, predictability, certainty, recovery, all of those E words that have to form the bit. So whatever new stuff you do, you must still maintain that in a regulated, high volume, high visibility, high risk world, which payments is. As I said before, I worked in every part of banking in my 31 years at HSBC, but it was only really the last 9 years in payments that I understood, because I felt it every night, or almost, the criticality of payments platforms. So the innovation's great, but I would always say, but you must maintain that level of reliability, resilience, and underneath it all. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what fancy technology or changes in process you have. If you don't have that service delivering high quality, reliability, high volume, immediacy, then you're going to be stuffed.
Today is February 28th, so it's Friday. It's payday for everyone around the world in most places, and in the UK, this is completely prescient conversation, as there are multiple banks that have gone down today for online banking, which has led, so the UK, the Treasury Committee has already written prior to this event today to 9 heads of banks in the UK to explain what's going on, what's the impact of their IT failures, and now what's really interesting with this is we have this whole digitalization, the move from cash to stablecoin, CBDC, etc., and the removal of physical funds. But the director of campaign for cash in the UK, Martin Quinn, has come up and stated, and he's got the evidence to back it up in the current climate, banking app issues demonstrate society's over-reliance on technology, which you can argue for and against. In the current climate, if things are down and you can't access it, then I need cash, right? That's my disaster recovery, my backup. But most of the time it works really well, and that comes back to the ubiquitous nature of things. It works. I don't care. I don't give it praise. It's not working. And rightly so, you're upset because you can't access funds. It has a detrimental effect to your life, whether it's paying the mortgage or buying food. But it's a really interesting position that we're still in at the moment. But I think we talked about society. As time moves on, my kids, your kids, our grandkids, this won't even be a blip on the radar for them.
Yeah. It will be fascinating to jump into the time machine and look out 20 years and see what it looks like. So
Fred, if we can just if we can just go back to what Matt said there, and about the whole platform reliability, downtime, and stuff like that. I think one of the things that I've noticed, the technology may change, but it's the processes and the people that actually don't change. And if you think of the disciplines that we learned as I said, COBOL programmers in 1900 and frozen to death, we the principles about good quality assurance and good processes to ensure fault-free implementations are still there today. I would bet a pound to a penny that failure today, Matt, was a people and process failure and not a technology failure. It'll be change related. It'll be somebody's changed something without the right controls and the right QA behind it, and that's what's caused it. And why would you do that on the end of the month? So it's people and process and things like that. So and that's what that's what allows the old dinosaurs like myself to still be able to bring value in the modern world, because the principles are still the same that led us to to get to a good place from a not so good place.
Well said.
So discipline, hygiene, right? Those things never go out of style. They're always critical, right? I think we could probably talk for hours on this. This is an incredible conversation, but I don't think anybody would listen to us for hours. Jumping forward here, what do you think are the technologies, or what do you see in the future? What's the thing that inspires you or gives you hope, or scares you?
Inspiring, I think, and interesting as well. I think is going to be the adoption of immediate payments globally and cross border. I think domestically, I think they've pretty much got it sorted now, and that's driven by central banks and regulators and country specific. I think it's going to be really interesting to see, in 5 years' time, somebody's going to be sat there going, "Of course, I can make a payment in 2 seconds from Hong Kong to Dubai, from Kazakhstan to Canada." I don't know what the big deal was, but around that, once you start going cross border, as we know, you've got all the challenges. You've got the FX, you've got the settlement, you've got all those things but once they sort out the business processes, the technology will be able to deliver it. So that's what excites me, and I think it's often, we said it before, get the business bits right, and the technology will respond or even evolve. So I think that's one thing that's going to be big, and just how we touched on it before, but how banks are changing. Our banks and technology companies are changing what they do and how they do it in terms of their platforms. So much more modular, much more sort of SDK type approach. So rather than be reliant on a vendor or have in-house build, more a hybrid where they've got the base core functional platforms, but they're configuring and changing themselves to reduce the reliance on a vendor to, make changes to meet the regulatory or indeed commercially advantageous changes, to give them the benefit. I think we're going to see a lot more agility and quicker turnaround in terms of time to market because of this hybrid approach, which is it seems to be being adopted more than it has been. Now, as we said before, that's all fine, but you've still got to have that level of control underneath that. So I think that's really interesting. And how AI is used more, just to give better advantages. I think payments has always been such a huge area of change. It's going to continue. Absolutely, it's going to continue, and I think that's what makes it, probably one of the most exciting areas of banking technology to be in. Scary at times, but really interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I've been sat thinking along on this one. I think for me, it's the democratization of access to services. And what I mean by that is moving money around the world and what have you often have to be large volume to justify the cost of moving it, the cost involved. And then you often needed your own flow or cash flow management to ensure, I don't know when this is going to hit in X, Y, Z or release funds or whatever. So the real talk about democratization is then you're going to be able to have micro businesses that can operate internationally because they can move things real time. You're going to generate access to things or markets, or we've seen the wave of wealth tech, private wealth management, not because you are an ultra high net worth, but because you might have $100 a month spare that you can start investing in. and you've got access to the tools for that. So that's the bit that excites me. And then I'm going to use AI as a catch-all. And the reason I'm saying that is it drives me as crazy as everyone else, the conversation around AI. All right. Can everyone stop drinking from the Kool-Aid, please? It's not everything to everyone, firstly. And it's not doing all the same things, and AI has been around for a long time. But what is interesting is the ability it's giving us as we're learning, and it's learning to accelerate things, and that we should be playing with this. And I don't mean that playing in the infantile sense. Experimenting is probably a better way of putting it. To find where it works well and where it doesn't, and understand that it's a tool. It's not the be all and end all. I know we have the whole Skynet concerns and what have you, but it's a tool that augments our daily life in multiple ways, and it can help us theorize things and then decide where we're going to put our investment into something, or how. I use it consistently now, and it's not a sell, it's not a plug, and I'm still learning, so I'm not going to say I'm an AI expert, but it's helping me refine through reports and reading and resources on payment standards and all these globally, and all these things that were taking me weeks and weeks and weeks, and there was no guarantee I'd have got it all right. And now I can synthesize that, pull out the information I need to. But the most important bit that people have got to understand currently is you need to double check your homework, right? You've got to fact check it. It's going to do lots, but it also, it turns out some crazy hallucinations is the right word, right? And some stuff that comes out is just bonkers. But in today's, without going too political, today's world of noise beats information and facts, which is therefore noise is speed, right? You've got to double check and make sure if I'm making decisions based on this, I've really understand. It comes back to the beginning of this conversation, the foundations of what I'm basing this on. And so that's what I'm excited about, to be honest. And I think it's, as a technologist, it's really exciting because we just don't know what it could be. And that's the bit I like. I don't like sitting in a meeting when we get asked about AI all the time and saying, these are the top 3 things it's going to do for you, and here's the ROI. I like when I say, I'm not 100% sure, but here's where I can see it going, and there's stuff it's going to represent back to me that we, collectively in the industry, haven't even thought of yet that will become the definitive business.
Yeah. I've spoken with 2 or 3 clients lately that have said, don't talk to me about AI. We were pitching, we were talking about an accelerator with a client, and one of the folks on the call from our side said, I want to be really clear, this isn't AI. And everybody on the client side went, thank goodness. Like, thank heavens. I don't want to hear about AI again. Like, I am done with it. So I think it is about the application and how do we leverage it and how can it make us smarter and better. It's not the solution. It is a tool that makes the solutions better and more efficient, but it's not the solution itself. And it's still evolving, and everybody is trying to figure out where it's going to go. I think the possibilities are endless as it continues to evolve. So I'm excited about what it could do for exactly what you talked about earlier, Steve, when you talk about getting off of that massive monolithic mainframe that's been put together with baling wire and duct tape over the last 30 years. I believe that some of the capabilities within AI, actually, I know that the capabilities within AI can help solve that problem, right? That everybody wanted to do the big bang core modernization, and we're going to stand up a core and migrate everything to it. 3 years, $50 million later, everybody went, hold on a second, what are we doing? Now we're going composable. I wonder if AI and some of the capabilities there go back to, let's do the monolith. Let's change the way that we are actually doing this and become more efficient, better, provide better services for our client, right? All those good things. But I think it's an incredibly exciting place right now. I'll probably say this in every episode. Stepping into a dinner party and telling everybody that you work in banking technology is a quick way to clear the room. But it's fascinating. If you can get them to sit still for 2 minutes and you talk to them, they go, wow, that's crazy. That's really exciting. So I absolutely love this space, but we're going to wrap. So in wrapping, we're going to change from technology. And I would say that, so Steve, for you made an incredible career in banking. You started in math. You did some different things along the way. If you hit the reset button and go back to 25-year-old Steve, what else might you have done for a living?
I always wanted to be a pilot. I always wanted to be a commercial pilot. I love planes. I love traveling. Unfortunately, in those days, because I needed glasses, I was short sighted, and you weren't allowed to wear lenses or anything like that, so I couldn't do it. So I had to give that up. But that's what I would have chosen. That's what I would have chosen. See the world. And meet lots of different people. But, obviously a footballer would have been my ideal initially, but that was never going to happen either.
Yeah. So do you fly now?
Yeah. We spread our time between, we've got a house in Hampshire here on the south coast, and we got a lovely place in Spain as well on the Costa Blanca. So I'm flying out pretty frequently in between them, and it's liberating to jump on a plane with just a passport in your top pocket, knowing you've got all your clothes and things in the other house as well. So yeah, I still get to travel a bit. Not as far into exotic places as I used to. As I say, when I was with HSBC, I was probably on the road 20 weeks out the year across the world, which is a hell of a lot. So I miss some parts of it. I don't miss other parts of it.
Yeah, great. Well, this has been an incredible conversation, Steve. It's so nice to speak with you and to get your take and to hear from people that have been through the process, right? You've been through a few turns or evolutions of the space, and it's great to hear that perspective, and then to hear that you're still engaged, you still love it, and you still want to see where it goes, and you're invested in that. That says something about the passion that you have for the technology, the space, but as you said earlier, the people, right? Leadership and the people, and how important are those things? And I greatly appreciate the conversation and the perspective. So thank you for your time.
Fred. Thanks for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it, and it's always good speaking with you guys.
Great. Matt, any closing words?
Any closing words? Many spring to mind, but probably not repeatable on here, Fred. So look, it's been lots of fun. This has been a chunky one, but deliberately so, I feel, because the subject and discussion warranted it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to more of these. Steve, thanks again for joining us. There's more to cover, and I suspect we will do some revisits in the future as well. So hopefully you'll be up for that too.
Thanks, Matt, again. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you, Steve, for Matt Williamson, Fred Fuller, episode 3 of Banking Bytes. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll get another one out there soon.
I'm adding one more thing. Sorry, Fred. I've just remembered. Yeah. We've now also we talk about, please give us solicit comments, feedback, direction, that kind of thing. We now have a mailbox that you can access. So banking.bytes@endava.com. Bytes is BYTES. We welcome all feedback, ideally constructive, but we'll take whatever we get.
All right. For Matt and Steve, this is Fred. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.